Yeah.
But if I show up with you, you're like, I have shaved head, you're an Eastern European man with like a big nose and really hairy, he's going to be scared of you.
Yeah.
A lot of Japanese people are a little bit scared of foreigners.
Right. To me, that story is super interesting because like it goes to what I was trying to say before, which is like the way that you're treated and the way that you're perceived is so specific to like details about your appearance and personality and the way that you behave, right? Like of course, like there is like colorism and racism in Japanese society, but to the end, there is a certain love of like Europeanness. But as a European, you could be someone who's an object of fetishization, or a scary,
or like scary Balkan man.
Yeah, exactly. And that it just depends too much on how tall you are, how fat you are, how pale you are, how white you are, if you've got tattoos, if you've got a beard. Like all those if you've got dyed hair, like all of these things are like, that will drastically change the way that people interact with you, these little details. And so
I can always tell when somebody's like been living here for a while is a Japan vet because they choose such a nice spot. Whenever I have to choose a spot, it's some shitty dark cafe, like the worst Starbucks in Tokyo. And the background is just nothing.
Right.
So thank you for suggesting that. Look at this.
It's really nice. And there's another nice cafe behind there, up there as well. So
all my stuff blew off. Great start. What did you do here today? You just like chilling?
I just had another meeting about some potential work projects related to writing about Japan and stuff like that.
Speaking of, you're a journalist, an editor, a translator.
Yeah.
What are some of the must-read Japanese novels, especially contemporary ones, that you can recommend?
Yeah, well, my favorite Japanese book of like the last, in English, that's been translated in the last...
that's what I'm talking about. I can't read in Japanese.
My favorite Japanese book in English out of the last like 5-10 years is The Thorn Puller by Hiromi Ito.
The Thorn Puller?
Yeah, The Thorn Puller.
Sounds eerie.
It's more...
It's about somebody who's torturing people? Or?
In a way. I mean, it's kind of a Buddhist novel in a way. It's all about suffering and the suffering of life. But Hiromi Ito she's mostly a poet, or she was most famous as a poet. So she wrote these very kind of edgy feminist poems in like the 80s.
She's still with us?
Yeah, she's still alive. She's she lives in Kumamoto, and the Thorn Puller, I think it's her only novel that's been translated into English. But it's this incredible sort of like Buddhist novel it's just about her life essentially, but she weaves it in with traditional Buddhist folklore and Japanese folklore. And so it's this interweaving of past and present and future and sort of spirituality and everydayness. And I love her writing style. And it's a very, it's about her taking care of her aging parents. It's very simple, but also very deep as well, with all those layers of history and religion there. So
as soon as you said it's about suffering, I was like,
you're down
Europe.
for it? Yeah.
I'm from Eastern Europe.
That's specialize.
Don't give me any like laughs. Don't give me any.
Right.
Don't give me any good times in the novel.
Yeah.
Just as much suffering as you can like cram into one book.
Yes.
I'm gonna take it.
This book.
So
has some
The
of
Thorn
that.
Puller. I do have to say I read. I'm not reading. I used to like really read a lot, but now I'm just doom scrolling on TikTok like everybody else. It's so depressing. So I'm trying to get back into it. And I did read The Convenience Store Woman, and that book was amazing to me.
Yeah. You liked it?
I had so much fun.
Yeah.
So I'm just negating everything that I said 5 minutes ago.
Sure.
That I want a book about suffering.
Yeah.
But that book is actually so hilarious.
Can I ask what was your reading? Like, did you think that it was critical of Keiko's point of view, like about the convenience store, or do you think it was like supporting, like saying that this is a way to live a life, this is a good way?
I'm a very simple-minded reader, so I'm going to go with option number 2.
Option number 2?
Yeah. I read it at like really super face value.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I might be wrong.
Well, this is one of the things that I'm researching.
But do read that book.
it's a good book, and it's
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm researching at Waseda is I'm comparing the Japanese to the original, and there are some various ways in which I think that the English version is more suggestive of a straightforward reading than the Japanese, because the Japanese has this afterword where a literary critic basically says, he basically tells us, you could have read this like literally, or you could have read it ironically. And instead, in English, at the end of the book, all there is this essay by Sayaka Murata about how much she loves the convenience store, and she's like, I want to kiss.
Because she used to work there, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
author
yeah.
used to work in a convenience store.
Yeah, yeah,
And she's the character so convincing in relaying why it's like everything makes sense in a convenience store. Plus my own experience in a convenience store is always kind of pleasant. It's a little refuge within every neighborhood. You know what I mean? Especially if you haven't lived here for a long time. Everything always works. So I think these two things combined made it for me like, oh yeah, of course she loves that. That's the message of the novel.
Yeah.
Outside world is messy. Here it's nice.
Yeah, but I think there is another.
But
reading.
why didn't they include the?
Well, it's in like Japanese softcover books, bunkobon. They always have it's like a regular feature of the book to have like this kaisetsu, this commentary on the book by like another author or a scholar or something like that. And it's just that they don't do that in English editions. They never have any sort of forward or afterward.
Because
nowadays.
It's more expensive or what?
I don't know. I think a lot of decisions made for like translated books are about the illusion of transparency. So like that they're presenting this book, they're trying to show that it's a direct, this is straight out of Japan. This is exactly the original text. Like they don't want you to think about how this is a translation or to think about how this might have been adapted or changed in some way. So I've noticed, because if you go back and you read, like a Kawabata Yasunari book or something like that from the 60s, like old, 20th century Japanese literature, real Japanese literature, there'll be like a foreword and like that tells us about Japanese culture and like what he's trying to say in this novel, but they don't do that anymore.
For contemporary novels.
For contemporary novels, they don't do that. Yeah.
Another book that I managed to read was Osamu Dazai. What's the famous novel from him?
No Longer Human.
No Longer. I love that.
Yeah.
That was very Dostoevsky-like.
Sure. Yeah.
I enjoyed that a lot.
Yes, it's a good. Dazai. It's cool that there are a lot of new Dazayas or previously untranslated Dazayas being published as well. That's something that I'm actually been working on with One Piece Books, is we're doing a new Dazai translation of some of his short stories that's going to come out this summer, or this fall, late summer. So people are interested in Dazai and they're reading him, and he's very depressing, but he's very good. So yeah, I guess Eastern European.
Very much so.
Yeah.
There's all these Japanese authors that then like published 2 or 3 novels and then just threw themselves in the river or something. It's also very Eastern European. We had a lot of like 19th century either dying from disease at 22 poets, or like killing themselves.
Yes, the modernist Japanese novelists, a lot of them did die prematurely, whether by their own hand or some tragedy. Yeah,
very familiar. How did you get into Japanese literature?
Yeah, well, I was always like into American literature, English language literature, because I grew up loving, just a big reader, loved to read, loved to write my own little stories. Like my mom would help me come up, write them down, and even when I was a little kid. And so when I was like a teenager, I got really into On the Road by Jack Kerouac, which has this it was the first book that had a writing style that I was interested in, because it's such a unique book, and I was interested in literature. And
I think all teenagers go through that phase. They're into books like Jack Kerouac.
Yes. Yeah, the On the Road is a very 15-year-old boy novel to like, but I love that novel, and it got me into literature, and I discovered Toni Morrison and Gabriel Garcia Marquez and all these contemporary authors modern contemporary authors who I really liked. So I was when I started studying Japanese and learning Japanese culture, I really wanted to.
But why did you start learning?
Right, so it's more so than studying Japanese literature. I started to get into Japan because, on one hand, no particular reason.
That's a good reason.
Yeah, I grew up I had a positive impression of Japan because I love Pokemon, and And my friend, his dad was like a lawyer who did business in Japan. So he would always come back from Japan and he would bring all these ramune, the ramune soda with the glass marbles. And so I had this, and my friend would always be like, we gotta go to Japan someday. And so I had this positive impression of Japan, which led me to sort of arbitrarily choosing to study it when I got to college. Also because my university, they had this program that would let me study abroad in Japan for free. So I was like, I want to study abroad for free. Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. And then actually going to Japan, I got interested in so many things, and in the built environment, like the architecture and the like Buddhism and Shinto spirituality and pop culture as well, and then literature. Once I was able to
So
read,
you studied here for a year first, and then you went back.
I studied, yeah. I came to Japan for like a summer and then a semester while I was in college. And then by the end of all that, I was starting to be able to read Japanese a little bit.
How many kanji did you know? Obligatory question.
Oh, man.
Approximately.
I think when I started to read...
Because after a year and a half, I know like 3.5.
I'm sure you know more than that. But no, it's way less, like, because they say that you
need like 2,000.
2,000?
That's crazy.
I remember I went through like a...
Eric, I'm going to die before I learn
yeah.
kanji.
Well, I assumed that I knew 2,000, but a few years ago I did like a flashcard and just saw how many I knew out of the 2,000. It was on a very long train ride. I think I only could do like 1,400 off the top of my head. This was this was a few years ago. I've learned more since then.
Because even Japanese people are like, we don't know how we learned that. It's insane.
Yeah.
All my Japanese friends are like, we pity you if you ever decide to learn kanji. Like you're gonna kill yourself.
It's a Sisyphusian task for sure. Yeah.
I'm trying to learn how to speak first, maybe.
Yeah,
Speak
that'll
well
be useful.
first.
Yeah.
And then
that's easier.
If I stay here, then this Herculean task is still waiting for me.
Yeah,
somewhere.
There's always
like
more kanji
creepy
to
man.
learn.
Huh?
Yeah. There's always more kanji to learn.
But after a year and that semester?
No, I would say so. After like the equivalent of 4 years, because
4 years,
like 2 years in school and then
in the States,
and
right.
then a summer and a semester. So basically a full school year in Japan.
You were just like studying Japanese those 4 years.
I was an English major, but I took the full-time course, and so it was like the equivalent of I would say after the equivalent of like 4 years Japanese study. That's when I was starting to read Japanese novels.
And you could speak.
And I could speak very well.
Very well.
By that point, yeah. And then it took me like a few more years before I passed the N1,
which is crazy, the highest level.
But it doesn't.
Respect.
Thank you, but it also doesn't test for speaking or any. It's very
still.
Come
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a difficult exam.
Since we're speaking of learning Japanese, there's a lot of people who want to learn Japanese, me included. At least better Japanese.
Yeah.
You have a tip? We need a tip from a pro.
Well, you're
not one of those shitty YouTube videos where they promise some snake oil.
Well, so I think that's the thing. The unfortunate thing is that there's no snake oil, right? So it's when
bad news.
Yeah, people. I have a friend, a friend of a friend who moved here, and they're very dedicated to learning Japanese, and they're very ambitious and signed themselves up for N3 after 6 months of being here with Japanese study, and they said, I don't think I'm going to pass. And I was just like, well, yeah, you probably won't. You should, for living, the best way to learn Japanese is to live in Japan while taking full-time Japanese classes. And for that, I think you could get to N3 in a year, right? That's the combination of...
Which is pretty impressive.
That's very impressive, yeah.
But like you said, you have to do it every day. Because I do it twice, sometimes once a week, because I was also working until recently. And that's not... It's not it's gonna bring you to maybe N5 in a year if you're doing a lot of homework.
Well, that's why I was really lucky to study full time in college, right? Because it's hard when you're a working person or just have so many other obligations in your life. I'm working on I'm trying to improve my Hebrew now, and it's really humbling because it's back to when back to a really low level, and you forget about how frustrating it is. And that's one of the big reasons I ended up doing an extra semester abroad in Japan, because after my first summer there, I learned so much, but I still couldn't communicate with people. And I was so frustrated by that I was like, well, I just need to come back after another year of learning when I can finally talk to people. And then I did that, and it was so much better and so much.
I'm also watching too much videos on YouTube about how to learn Japanese instead of actually learning Japanese.
Right. There's, well, I'm sure the YouTube videos can help, but there's a lot of, you gotta, right, there is a part of language learning that's just, especially for a language as different as Japanese, right?
Come
you
to
gotta
Japan
memorize.
Come to Japan if you can, and do an intensive course here.
Yes, yeah.
Because you learn something and then you have to use it,
exactly,
right, out
yeah.
in the world.
It's very difficult to apply your Japanese outside of Japan because there's not that many Japanese people abroad nowadays and not that many opportunities you'll have to use it. So being here where people aren't that great at English, like there's some level of English proficiency, but they'll be so happy anyone will be so happy for you to speak Japanese to them. So it's such a good opportunity.
We gotta clear something up.
Yeah.
People seem suspiciously impressed by my low Japanese here. I'm talking about locals. So you have the whole Nihongo Jozo thing.
Yeah.
Is that like an actual compliment, or is that, because there's some discussion around that, or people just like, keep working on it, buddy?
Yeah, that's a good...
What does that mean?
So, yes, there are levels to it. I think there... I think it is a genuine... Because, a lot of people will be really like, who've been in Japan for a while or know some amount of Japanese, will get kind of annoyed when Japanese people tell them, "Oh, Nihongo jozu desu ne," like,
which means your Japanese
you're so good at Japanese, yeah. And be like they don't really mean it. And I think it speaks to a larger frustration that people have with, Japanese people, being polite superficially and sort of coming from a culture where direct communication is more normal. You have this like anxiety that what is on the surface is like some sort of cruel lie, right? Portraying the truth. But it's really not that extreme. It's what the superficial politeness is just that. It's not disguising some evil intention beneath. They're just being polite. So they do mean it. They don't actually really, like, obviously if you're not good, you're not good, and you know that about yourself. But I think Japanese people are really happy when people speak Japanese at all. So
that politeness, that superficial politeness level is just like an automatism, or how would you characterize it?
I think so. It's
just something to say.
It's something.
There's no intent behind it, good or bad, in a lot of cases.
Or I think the intention is it's exactly what it is. It's to say that you're speaking Japanese. You're good at Japanese relative to their expectation of a foreigner, which is that you cannot speak Japanese at all. So if you can speak a little, you are good in a relative sense. Of course, if you were even if you're speaking, because that doesn't go away, them saying you're good at Japanese, even if there's not really levels to it. I mean, if you can just speak to someone in Japanese and you have a fluent conversation, obviously they're respecting your Japanese ability. But they will still probably tell you, "Oh, you're good at Japanese," even if it's like you're completely fluent and you've lived in Japan for 30 years or whatever.
I love how you said it doesn't go away like it's some disease.
Yeah. Like it's not that there's some sort of evil trick where it's like if you are actually good at Japanese, then they don't tell you that you're Japanese. It's like, no, they still tell you that. Like, I mean, obviously everyone's different, but I've been in conversations where I've just had normal conversations with people. They don't say anything. I've had like such a long, complicated conversation with someone, and then they'll be like, at the very end of it, it's like, "Oh, you're so good at Japanese." It's like, well, like, we just had this we just had a normal conversation.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah, like, it's really
it's
okay.
It's kind of obvious that I can speak.
Yeah.
No, I just read on Reddit, take it with a grain of salt.
Sure.
If they say Nihongo Jozo, then okay, yeah, that's like, okay, whatever. But if they say, how long have you been living here for?
Right.
That's the real compliment.
That's true. That's certainly a compliment. There are other things. The true compliment would be, because I'll ask this to people sometimes when, because you can tell, it is unfortunate where it's not like English, where people from other countries get really, really good at English and you can think that they're a native speaker, right? I've had this many times, people from Germany, people born in, well, you lived in Germany, but like people from, people
Germans
born,
have a bit of an accent. They have a bit of a Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, that's true. But some people can pass, and some people, who were maybe born in a Latin American country or an Asian country, live in U.S. for many years, they can pass. It's almost impossible to pass as a foreigner speaking Japanese, but some people do. And then you ask them, like, Nihon umare desu ka? Nihon sodachi desu ka? Like, are you born in Japan or were you raised in Japan? And that's like
the highest.
That's certainly the highest.
Ceremonial grade compliment.
That's the ceremonial grade. And usually the answer is yeah. I've yet to meet. Honestly, I've met to meet someone who had wanted to ask them that, and the answer was no. I just learned it on my own because I think that's how difficult it is. So yeah, that's the true, maybe impossible.
In another life.
In another yeah, me as well.
But you're on your way there.
I think it's different.
This is also your job. Part of your job is to know good Japanese. I mean, to
it
know
is,
excellent Japanese.
And I've had I've fooled people on the phone, and I've fooled old men when we were staying in a hostel, and I was on the lower
really good
bunk.
Beginning of the sentence. I fooled old man.
he peeked his head over, and he had a little freak out.
What's
yeah,
this?
Yeah. But I think it's like there's something still different about the mannerisms and
because there's
tone.
so much more to speaking native level than just language ability on its own, right?
Exactly. So I think even there's all those little unconscious habits, and there are certain things that people say in situations, right, that could make it sound like they're from Japan or of a certain background or this and that. So the level of specificity goes very deep, and I think I would think of it like, almost like maybe Japan is it's a difficult language, but maybe it's also a fairly specific language where if someone's speaking English in a certain way, I don't assume that they're not a native speaker. I just assume that they're from a certain place where English is spoken. Like they could have like an Australian dad, or like they could be from Alaska. Like I don't know.
Or
right?
went to an international school or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's international school English. That's such a thing, right? And so Japanese, I think maybe doesn't have this broad canvas where we can feel that's like someone's native.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, back to your story.
Right.
So you finished 4 years
Yes.
of university, but then you stay here or you move back and then come like. I studied abroad in Japan. I finished my university in the U.S. and I lived in New York for a year. I was working in PR. Nothing to do with Japan.
Nothing to do with Japan. And I started to get into freelance journalism during that time. And I wrote articles about Japan. The first article that I did that got any attention was for Vox. I did like a sort of exploration of the poor working conditions in the anime industry. And a lot of people read that and liked it, so I started doing more Japan-related articles.
Okay, tell us about the bad conditions at the.
Well, they're very bad. They're very bad.
It's closed. They're extremely bad.
They're extreme. I mean, there's just the wages are incredibly low. The hours are incredibly long. The training is not very good. Like many creative industries, right? It survives off the passion of the creators. But
I thought these guys and girls are celebrities, artists.
Yeah.
Or do you have to first make it and be one of the top 1% superstars who's writing, I don't know, what's a popular
Demon Slayer, whatever,
Demon
right?
Slayer, and then you made it.
I'm sure at that level, right? It's a different story, but in animation, it's studios. They employ a lot of different animators. It takes a lot of hands to draw or make an anime.
We're talking about manga or anime.
Anime.
Anime. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Manga also, right? Yeah, that's more of a. I think if you can write Attack on Titan, sure, you'll be doing well, but it's certainly a very precarious stability. But in the animation industry, nowadays there's more outsourcing to other countries because the wages are so low and there's not enough labor force. There's not enough training. So there's an animators project that's trying to change this, but it's an exploitative, low-paying industry.
But then, since this is a really popular thing, who's skimming all the
people at the top,
the profits from all of this incredible amount of labor at the bottom?
It's
like the studios are just raking it in, or
I think it's slightly more complicated than that. I wish I could. It's been a lot. I wrote this in 2019, so it's been a while. There is some sort of it's not just that the CEO of a studio is incredibly rich and that they're exploiting everyone beneath them. There's a sort of a profit issue in the animation industry among the studios and the broadcasters and the merchandise make. There's this setup is very unfavorable towards especially the people at the bottom of the animation ladder.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a quite structural issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also like not. Yeah, I'm thinking of like everything. Like if it's an anime, it's popular.
Yeah.
You know, immediately. But
Right.
that's not the case, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yes. There are
There's
a lot of anime that don't
fail.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go on.
No, yeah,
It's a
yeah.
bit of a detour. So this was your first
Oh, right.
article.
Yeah. So then I actually I'd been wanting to try living in Japan, so I got this job at a travel company, but that was right when COVID was starting to happen. So I had my flight to Japan and everything, and I lost that job. They rescinded the offer. But I was doing some freelance novel translation for One Piece books at the time, and so I had money to survive on. So I thought, fuck it, I'll go to Japan anyways. And so I went and I worked it out, and I started doing more journalism, more translation, and then eventually editing manga and novels for One Piece books, and that became sort of my career over the last 5 years here in Japan.
That's incredible.
Regretting
the decision or not?
No, it's so crazy because I almost didn't come, right? Because it was all the borders were closing. It was a very stressful moment, and I almost decided not to go.
But you're happy you did decide.
I am happy that I did. It's just my life would be completely different, right?
You would still be working in PR in New York.
Yeah, maybe.
Doesn't sound too bad.
No, it's not. It would just
I
be
don't know.
so.
I'm just picturing Mad Men.
Yeah,
You're in like in a fancy suit,
less
drinking
rich.
whiskey in the afternoon.
Yeah, but just less rich. The PR doesn't have great salaries. But maybe I would be like a journalist, like for a digital media company in New York or something like that. Just my life would be completely different, and I think probably less interesting. But yeah, it's just weird to think about that turning point of like almost either being here, and now I've been here for 5 years. You know, I do want to spend more time in the U.S., but I also really like being here. It's just such a weird pinch point in my personal.
Yeah. Same. Yeah, I don't know. We miss family and friends.
Yeah.
But it's really cool to be here. Mm-hmm. It's a balancing act. I don't know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, it's difficult, right?
Yeah, because it's really far
Yes.
for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see. How old are you?
Often? I'm about to turn 29.
Oh, you're so young. I'm 10 years older than you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you still have. Give me your youth.
It feels like it's slipping away very quickly. To be honest.
You're still writing about Japan for a lot of like really eminent publications. What's some of the favorites or a favorite story that you did?
Well, I'll just because it's been on my mind, and I mean the trees are beautiful here. I just finished. It's in the process of editing, so it'll be out sometime in May. I just wrote this big article for the Japan Times about trees in Japan, and it's like I think
unexpected, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think people think about cherry blossoms, right? But then and autumn leaves, right? These are things Japan is so famous for. But for a resident here, someone who's been here for a few years, I think the thing that people think about and that bothers them is they see that Japan, they're very strict with tree trimming. And so they take down trees very readily. They hack off the branches in this very way that just sort of offends a lot of people's sensibilities. And so I wanted to explore what's with this gap, because at Shinto shrines, there's a huge one right behind us, the trees can be kami, can be gods and spirits too. They'll wrap the
Shinto belief.
Yeah, the shimanawa, the cord around the tree, marking that the tree is a residence of a god, of a spirit. And so there's a tree worship, and trees are beloved historically, but there's a very rough way that they're treated and used in contemporary cities. So I wanted to explore that contradiction.
So what's behind it?
Well, read the article to find out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cliffhanger.
Yes. But what I'll say is that Japan, there is the old ways of a Japanese furusato, like a mountain village, a farming village at the foothill of a forest or the mountains. There's a lot of really deep culture and traditions and things that are very sustainable and probably applicable to modern life. But with the depopulation and with the modern consumer society and with the centering of Japan around Tokyo, very concentrated around Tokyo, a lot of these traditions and values, which still would have a lot of applicability and use to modern day, are being lost. So this is also the case with trees.
By the way, what's happening here? Didn't they want to build some sort of hideous mall or something here in Meiji Jingu? And some authors, I think Haruki Murakami or somebody were also protesting this. Because Japan, I don't know. So, I'm the only. Sometimes I feel like I'm going mad. But I feel like Japan. I actually have confirmation from this now. That Japan doesn't have a lot of green spaces because there's Tokyo. Sorry. Because there's 40 million people living here. And I just read in a Guardian article that that Tokyo has like per inhabitant the least amount of green space. There's so much concrete here, but people are like, no, there's so many parks. It's not that many parks. I don't know, especially coming from Europe. It doesn't. We could use more parks here. Also in the summer, it's brutal because there's no trees. There's a lot of parking spaces. I live in Shimokitazawa. There's these tiny streets and cars everywhere, and there's no trees. Now they made like a, I'm sorry, I'm ranting. No. But now there was a little space in front of the station, and now they made like I thought they're gonna make. I saw that they're building something, and I thought, it's gonna be a nice little park, because there's
bus station, right?
Bus station. Fuck me.
Yes.
Like, there's every other capital is trying to like push traffic out of the center, and here they're bringing it even more in. The bus
station in Shimokitazawa, that one blows my mind. I really don't know, but there's so many layers to what you just said. So like the one thing about just gap between what people say and the reality, like I find this a lot about Japan, about when people talk about Japan, people who live here, people who visit here. It's just that everyone has a different experience in so many different ways. The way that you're treated, the way that you interact with Japan, it is so specific based off of who you are, not like it could relate to your race or your height, but it also, of course, your values, your behaviors, so many things. And then people talk about this and just generalize it. And so when you hear, I've like for about trees and park space, I've heard every single people from other foreigners who live here, I've heard every point on the spectrum. Oh, Tokyo is so green. It has so many amazing green spaces. There are trees everywhere. Of course, that was said by someone who lives in Mitaka, a very green part of Tokyo, whose regular commute passes through Inokashira Park, and who has an annual membership pass to Shinjuku Gyoen, the beautiful places in Tokyo. And then, some people will say that, some people all the way go down to, it's horrible. There are no trees anywhere. They cut them all down. I can't find any green space. And that'll be said by someone who, who lives in Shimokitazawa and has to commute to Shimbashi or Ginza or something like that, right? And so, but the truth is that, Tokyo does not have a lot of green space for how many people it has.
I know it's very densely populated, so it's impossible. So it's not only
there are a lot of beautiful green spaces in Tokyo.
That's true.
And I think the point about not Meiji Shrine but Jingu Gaien, which is the controversy that you're talking about, that is one where it's like a lot of parks, they need to be redeveloped because there's less public funding, and so they redevelop them with private investment money. And
we really need another mall. That's all I'm asking.
So they need to fund, so basically because they're making them private, they need to fund the parks somehow. So they put some sort of shopping facility inside the park that's going to fund the park. So maybe in a way it's a sustainable model if we're saying, well, screw public funding. But it leads to this problem where it's like you're redeveloping green spaces, but making them less green in the process. And it's very common. And the Jingu Gaien was definitely worthy of controversy for its historical reasons. It's a very historic place in Japan for a lot of in Tokyo. It has a lot of deep history behind it. So,
but it's going ahead.
I believe it's going ahead with less. They're cutting down less trees than they originally planned.
What a compromise!
But, it relates to I also explore this in the article. So it relates to how the government and bureaucracy operates in Tokyo as well. And sometimes the key thing is obviously people should be outraged about these things, and they should be more outraged. There should be more protests about this sort of thing. There is a flip side where Japan also has, maybe because of its population density or maybe because of cultural values, there's a very high standard of safety. So back home, like where I'm from in the suburbs of Philadelphia, they never trim the trees, right? There are beautiful trees everywhere around where I live.
More like wild.
Yeah, more like wild trees. They're just
sounds
growing
nice.
there. And the trees, they drop their branches in the middle of the street all the time. It could kill someone at any time, but they don't trim the trees. A tree falls down, the road is blocked, and they clear it. Japan does not want anyone to be killed by a falling branch. So where there could be someone killed by a falling branch, a lot of the
extra
time,
super careful.
they trim the branches
yeah.
so that it couldn't kill someone, right? And I don't know obviously there's some sort of compromise that needs to be made here. Maybe it's okay to be killed by a falling branch. I don't know.
You're just born unlucky.
Yeah,
Let's just chalk it up to that, you know.
Yeah. So like there's not some sort of cruelty towards nature. There's bureaucracy, there's regulations, there's maybe a lack of expertise in environmental studies and integrating environmental concerns with safety concerns. There are gaps there. But yeah, it's not black and white in that Japan love tree, look, cherry blossom. And it's not black and white in that Japan hate tree, Japan cut down tree, right? Like there's a lot going on here.
When you said you wrote an article about trees, I was like, oh, this is going to be so boring, but it was actually super fascinating.
Ah, good. Yes.
Okay, another story, and then I stopped pestering you about it. But you're such a wealth of these things that you probably can't get from anybody else.
The one that maybe is fun to talk about is also Japan Times. I did a series of articles 2 years ago. I think in 2022. That's 3 years ago now. About dating in Japan. And
now we're talking.
Yes, and about it was 3 articles in the series. One was about like how people are dating in modern Japan. So just like, are they using apps? Are they meeting in person? One was about the dynamic of dating internationally in Japan, which there's a lot of discourse about. And so I wanted to really look into like what I wanted to know is
sorry, but half of YouTube now is like how to date a Japanese girl.
It's very disturbing.
It's really disturbing.
Well, what I wanted to find out is like, apart from what people say, right? Apart from weird things that people say in actual dating behavior, is there such thing as the gaijin hanta, which is like a Japanese woman who, or man actually, who deliberately pursues foreigners, probably to have a half Japanese baby, which is seen as very attractive.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That's the whole reasoning behind the hunting.
That's part of it.
I see, yeah.
It's part of it. And is there such thing, and to what degree is yellow fever operating, fetishism of Asian women operating in the dating scene? I wanted to like, obviously these things are big ideas, but I wanted to see like, in terms of actual dating behavior, are these, how do they operate? And then the last article in the series was about how long-term relationships are working in Japan, especially among international couples or cross-cultural couples. So it's for like the Japan Times community section, which is about international life in Japan.
But just tell us a little bit more.
Yeah.
Read the articles, of course.
Yes, read the articles. But I mean, I think
you got to give us a little.
I mean, about the second article, which I think is what maybe people will be the most interested in, is the truth. Obviously, there's fetishism that is a part of this, but it's very hard to quantify. And I would say probably for this article series, I interviewed like maybe 10 to 12
gaijin hunters
people. No, just different people. Like I probably interviewed like 3 to 4 of each. 3 to 4 Japanese men, 3 to 4 Japanese women, 3 to 4 foreign men living in Japan, 3 to 4 foreign women living in Japan, all of different ethnicities, mostly in their 20s and 30s. And about the thing that was interesting, and of course people, they're never going to admit that they're like a fetishist or like a racist in some way, right? So you're not going to get that answer out of people. But there's a very simple explanation as to the gap in, you see more foreign men with Japanese women and less foreign women with Japanese men. And the explanation for that is very simple, and it was one that was unanimous among all the people I interviewed, which is simply that for Japanese women, if they want to be in a relationship where, if they hold certain non-Japanese values, if they want to for better or worse, Japan is quite a misogynistic society. For better or worse, sorry, for worse, Japan is quite a misogynistic society, and and women can feel very restricted in relationships. And if they want to be able to, women who have this feeling that they want to assert themselves more, that they want to make more decisions, that they want to be more free, often they'll feel comfortable dating a man from
From an outside culture.
From an outside culture. Whereas for foreign women, they have to go through the reverse process. Where if they date Japanese men, a lot of the time
They're expected to be more adherent to more traditional Japanese values.
exactly.
Which they don't.
Which they don't want to do. Yeah. And that, like, it was I mean, small sample sizes, but this was unanimous among all the women that I interviewed.
I do hear that often from friends of friends or female friends here that it's extremely hard to date for them.
Yes.
They want to date local Japanese guys,
Right.
but they say other people guys seem scared of them.
Yeah.
Or they expect them to do
Weird. Yeah, just different things.
Different things that they're not.
Yeah, it's like a cultural gap that just works in favor of this particular gender gap. And for among some of the foreign men who I interviewed, there was a appreciation that, like, or a sort of dislike of, I guess I would call it toxic masculinity. That toxic masculinity is different in Japan and the West, let's say. And so a couple men that I interviewed mentioned that they felt comfortable dating Japanese women, where a sign of their manliness, right, could be that they were polite and well-mannered and good with their words, rather than sort of like this dominant, ripped.
Andrew Tate, idiot.
Yeah. And not that muscular guys aren't, like, popular among women in Japan. They certainly...
Not at all. I think just the beauty standard.
Yeah, the beauty standard
what
is
you see
very...
on posters, what you see in magazines, it's a very different type of masculinity.
Yes, exactly.
Than in the West.
And so
we expect it to look like Wolverine.
Yeah.
Here it's more like just
a fit slimness, maybe,
slim, like with a nice hair, nice style,
nice skin, right?
Nice skin,
these
guys have amazing skin. Let's just put that.
People have good skin in
amazing,
Japan.
yes.
And so people who I talked to foreign men said that they felt comfortable with that, and that they felt like they had better chances in a dating market
in the West.
Than in the West. Although that actually they didn't say that, because I think that was one of the other misunderstandings that the article tries to correct, which is that that white men are popular among Japanese women, and it's a lot more complicated than that, because really the image of if you're, like, talking about who is the guy who's going to be fetishized, it's actually quite specific, right? It's not, for better or worse, it's not someone who looks like me. I'm Jewish. I'm the same average height as Japanese guy. I have similar hair color to Japanese people, similar skin tone to Japanese people. What we're talking about is someone who's 6 foot tall, who is blonde, who is pale, who is blonde, and has blue eyes. This is like
Hitler's dream.
If you're Hitler's dream, you will be the object of fetish.
Time of your life.
You'll be the object of a fetish, right? And so you could be having the time of your life, but no one actually cares. You'll be having the time of your life as an object.
Yeah.
And you could actually still struggle to have an actual relation. Like, you could struggle in different ways.
People just want to look at you and, like,
people could
worship you as an object,
as an idea,
beautiful
of foreignness,
object, a sculpture. Yeah.
And it's the same way that, that Asian women can, I don't want to say same way, but it could be considered a similar way that Asian women can be fetishized in Western countries.
It's better to look like this, be kind of a little bit ugly, and just,
and
people have to deal with your personality.
People date who, right. And that was the thing that I'm trying, and maybe it's like a slight, maybe it's also comes from an ideological perspective, is that I don't want there to be this perception that there's these really creepy dynamics at play, because I do think most of the people I know, and my own experience, and experience of many people, it's very simple, right? It's just that you meet someone who likes you and you like them, or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you're living here, most people that you meet are Japanese. So you might meet a foreigner, and you'll have an easier time to get along with them, and you could date them, or you meet a lot of Japanese people. One of them's a Japanese person who you vibe with and who likes you and you like them. And so I'm trying to, in this article, just trying to claw through these dynamics and try to show maybe that they're not really as at play as we imagine they are.
I'm married,
Yeah.
so I'm not even in the dating pool.
Sure.
But I did find out pretty quickly that Japanese people are afraid of me a little bit. So I don't think I would fare well in this dating market right here.
Right.
I have a friend a Japanese guy, love him to death, super sweet, and his wife is a dancer. And one day he invited me to like a dancing show in
Yeah.
Shibuya. And he's like, I'm going to pay for your ticket. It was all
Nice.
night, a lot of different acts. I was like,
Cool.
oh, amazing. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And then we started walking there. It was Friday night. And he told me, I actually got to tell you some. My wife, who's also a professional dancer, also a teacher.
Yeah.
She has a stalker.
Okay.
And the stalker is coming to all her classes, to all her
Jeez.
performances.
Oh my God.
But I'm like a skinny
Yeah.
Japanese guy.
Yeah.
He's totally not afraid of me.
Yeah.
But if I show up with you, you're like, I have shaved head. You're
Yeah.
an Eastern European man with like
Yeah.
a big nose and
Yeah,
really
yeah.
hairy. He's gonna be scared of you.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
a lot of Japanese people are a little bit scared of foreigners.
Right.
So that's why.
That's really well. That's
so
well. That's.
I was like, oh, you totally.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm just. Yes, buy me more tickets. I can come anywhere.
Right. And to me, that story is super interesting because like it goes to what I was trying to say before, which is like the way that you're treated and the way that you're perceived is so specific to like details about your appearance and personality and the way that you behave, right? Like it's if of course like there is like colorism and racism in Japanese society, but the to the end there is a certain love of like Europeanness. But as a European, you could be someone who's an object of fetishization,
The
or
techno
a scary,
Viking, or like scary Balkan man.
Yeah, exactly, and that it just depends too much on how tall you are, how fat you are, how pale you are, how white you are, how if you've got tattoos, if you've got a beard, you know, like all those if you've got dyed hair, like all of these things, or like you know that will drastically change the way that people interact with you, these little details. And so whenever people will say like, oh, Japanese people never sit with me, next to me on the bus.
They don't.
Right. And I could be the, you know, we're relatively similar in size and shape, but like I find me personally, I'm never like people always sit next to me. I'm never like
you're non-threatening.
I've got this, and I've got Japanese mannerisms. I behave my personal sort of bubble.
You're not
or
like this on the.
Yeah.
on the train.
I'm being like don't worry about me, right? Like, and so it's even for two people, you know, two Indians, two British people, whatever. They could be treated in completely different ways by Japanese people, depending on those other details.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good one. By the way, before you have like 15 minutes, I want to talk about pop culture as well. What are some of the like cool things that are worth
Like
diving into? Like
about Japan.
Yeah. But more like a pop culture thing that's maybe not so well known in the West.
Yeah. Well,
Because you've been here for a while, you're writing about this stuff.
sure. Yeah, that's
Worth exploring, you
Okay.
know, or getting into.
yeah.
That's
Well,
not like manga, anime, or whatever.
sure. I mean, I think there's a rich. I think. I mean, two things about Japanese, like it's in between culture and pop culture, but two things I really like about Japanese culture are music and architecture. I'll say, and about music, I think it's just that Japan, with all of its hobbies, right?
You're talking about J-pop or J-rock?
Well, it goes very niche, right? So there's like there's a flavor for everything. There's idols, right? And you can go so deep into that if you're into that. There's Japanese jazz. You can go so deep into that if you're into that. Japan has incredible jazz musicians. There's so many genres that of the past that still capture people's interest, like visual kei, which is like kind of this rock style with crazy fantasy, like emo sort of
Get up.
yeah. To obviously city pop has had a huge resurgence, and then there's Japanese funk, right? There's all these.
Stay with me.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, couldn't help myself.
So yeah, there's for things like that, right? There's so many interesting niches and scenes that go so deep. So I think like if you're into music, whatever the Japanese version of the genres that you're into are so worth checking out because you could find incredible musicians.
Good tip.
Yeah. And then with the architecture, I think it's also a thing that, you know, people, as we've been sort of talking about, like people will just see it however they see it. People will either be like, it's so beautiful, or it's so ugly, or whatnot.
There's no in between.
There's no in between,
It's
right?
fascinating to watch people visit you and be,
People
in
always
either
take-
camp.
Yeah, people
Like
always.
my parents, they
yeah.
love Gothic cathedrals and
Yeah.
old architecture. So Tokyo was like, what,
They thought
what
it
is
was-
this?
yeah.
They were, I mean, they love Japan,
Yeah.
but not because of architecture.
But
But there's,
yeah.
I don't know. I have a lot of like friends who are like graphic designers, illustrators, and
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
And they're like, this is awesome.
Yeah,
Everything
yeah.
looks so cool.
Yeah. Oh, what I like about Japanese, I think it's cool. Obviously, it comes with pros and cons, but I like how they do a lot of building in Japan, right? So they're constantly, the city is constantly changing, which has downsides, but they're also constantly making new things. So it gives space for new ideas to be born. And but because of that, you also have a texture of all these different styles. So one of my favorite things, Japanese architectural styles, is called shibubiru. Shibubiru, meaning like
Biru.
Like biru as in building. Biru is
course.
beer. Biru is building. Shibui is like kind of a stringent sophistication, like kind of like a silver fox
Stringent
ordering whiskey.
sophistication.
Yeah, like a kind of, if you're into like really like, smoke, like abstruse smoked foods, or like, things that other people think are kind of like, it's sophisticated but also kind of hard. It's this style where it's 70s buildings that use tiles, colorful tiles, blue or green or red, as part of the building facade. And I really like this style. I love tiles. I really like tiles, and the use of tiles. It's very simple, but it whenever I see a shibubiru, I get excited because it just makes me happy. And so you can see all these different. You could develop, like, exploring Japan if you have a little bit of idea about the different kinds of buildings you can find. It just adds a lot of joy to your walking around when it's like, oh, like that's an old like kominka, like that's an old traditional Japanese like farmhouse, like here in the middle of the city. Or there's a shibubiru, and like, oh, there's like a weird, like crazy brand new building that's all like glass or whatever, right? And so I like how you can see all these different things in Japan, and that there's always new ideas being generated by the building and rebuilding of the landscape.
What's your favorite, when it comes to architecture, what's your favorite neighborhood that definitely should be explored in Tokyo?
Man, that's
Because this place is so massive.
It's so
like,
big.
Like I do want to get out of the whole like seeing the landmarks thing.
Yeah.
It's just packed with tourists.
Yeah, I would say exploring like a wealthy residential neighborhood is interesting
yes.
for me. Yeah, like a Daikanyama, or like
Yeah, I've been there.
You'll see a lot of cool buildings, or maybe around Hiro area, seeing like the types of houses that people live in. Even like the area around Shimokitazawa is a very wealthy residential area, so some people have really cool houses around there.
Komabato Daimae area is also
exactly.
pretty nice.
Yeah, near Todai. So I think you can't go wrong with a rich area of Tokyo residential.
What else do you like to do?
I
just had like my friend David, who's a filmmaker here.
Yeah.
I interviewed him. I mean, we had a chat, not an interview. And he said one of the problems when you move to Tokyo is that there's so many options.
Right.
So you constantly have FOMO for all the things that you didn't do.
Yeah.
You know, and then you just like split yourself into 1,000 directions.
Yep.
And then, it becomes a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
So you can get overwhelmed quickly, and then you just start staying at home.
Yep.
And,
Yes.
I'm curious because I recognize this sentiment as well.
Yep.
I'm curious to know how to get what's your advice for getting over that, or how did you deal with that?
Well, for me, it's simple, just because like I love living in a big city like Tokyo, but I really crave nature. So I spend a lot of my time getting out into nature, either into the mountains or to the seaside. And so like
From Tokyo.
From
for a couple of
Tokyo.
days.
for even just for a day, most of the time just for a day. A couple of days would be better, because like it does take a while to get to most places. But I do love how you can get to some place beautiful in the mountains in 2 hours, some place beautiful by the sea in 2 hours. Either way, that's really big for me. And so that's like a lot of what I sort of aspire to do in my free time. And also,
but you liked that already before when you were in Philadelphia or New York.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
okay, so what you're saying is, if you already know what you're into, just stick to that and try to find.
Right. That, yeah. So yeah, right. There's so many,
because there's this thing like, I need to try all the Japanese things.
Right.
And you move over, right?
I think
but you can't really do that.
Yeah, I think like it's important. You can distinguish, what you want to do as someone who's newly living in Japan, trying to experience Japanese culture, versus someone who's just trying to live their life ordinarily. And so, of course, like I think I'm just already past the phase where I want to do specifically Japanese things. Like there's some more Japanese things that I like or that I can't do outside of Japan. Like like snowboarding has become a big hobby of mine, and that wouldn't be a hobby of mine in the US because it's too expensive for me to do regularly, but I can afford to do it regularly here. And so there's things like that. But then I think there's a difference between like, living in Japan and trying to make the most of the experience by traveling, by doing cultural activities, by going to new places, which I also still really like to do, and I like to visit countryside places in Japan especially, versus just like getting a hobby. And if you have a hobby, there's a community for that in Japan, and you can go deep into that. And that's also a good way, because the truth is, like, when people struggle to make friends here, it's because, if you're only interested to make a friend because you need a local friend, that's a two-way street. Like, they only want to make a friend with you
to learn English.
Yeah, because you're not a local, right? And that's not very deep friendship. So it's better to make friends through other ways, through hobbies or through communities. And so and Tokyo, of course, has a million of everything for all of those like hobbies, right?
Eric, you're such a treasure trove, cool stuff to talk about. And knowledge. So we have to hang out again. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
You want to shout out any of your social media? Where can people follow your work?
Yes. So you can.
We're gonna put the link also.
Okay, sounds good. I'm on X. I'm not posting regularly, but you can follow me on X. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I have a blog, Over the Offing, where I post sporadically as well. So, please, I'm happy to connect with everyone. So,
Thanks again, man. This was a pleasure.